Welcome to the Road is Dead podcast, episode number 81. I am your pseudo-host, Rob Curtis. I am joined here in the studio with
Tim Strelecki
and
Leah Sanda.
And, of course, our good friend out in Colorado,
Mike Friedman. Here I am.
And we are here once again. Thank you for your support and watching and listening. Every week we're getting more and more people coming up to us and telling us that they listen, they watch it, what have you. If you're listening to the audio version, maybe check out the video version we have online at YouTube under Road is Dead.
You can see our pretty faces interacting as we speak. It's really glorious.
You guys might have pretty faces. I don't have much of a pretty face, but
Rob, you're pretty.
Well, thank you. I believe I am the face that launched 1,000 bikes, as in away from me. You know, that's a good reference. Helen of Troy, the Trojan War,
right?
The face that launched 1,000 ships. Anyway,
not my bag.
Maybe I'm the face that launched 1,000 shits.
Definitely that.
I think that's your ass.
Yeah, probably.
You know, if you think about it, each one of us has done that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Think about how many times that's happened in your life to date. At least twice a day.
1,000 shits?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I probably take more than 1,000 shits.
Let's do the math. Let's calculate it.
Let's do the math.
I saw a joke the other day that, and I'm probably going to mess this up, talking about the quality of the food and the looks of the women in England is the reason why English sailors are some of the best in the world.
I think I sent that to you.
Okay, yeah, I was like.
To date, at 40 years old, 29,200 shits. That's an average of 2 a day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
29,000. That's actually lower than you think.
What if you have IBS?
That's
I mean, you could say 3. I mean, you could go up to 3. So, I mean, you know, and that's a very common thing, and it comes in waves. So, you know.
And there are people who maybe poop once a week.
What if you have a colostomy bag?
Then is it
does it change
number of shits?
Yeah, does that change?
Because then you're like constantly shitting. Do you ever actually stop shitting, except for I guess changing out the bag?
I don't know.
We have lost 30%, or no, like 70% of our listeners at this point.
I mean, it is interesting. I mean, everybody does that. Yeah. Well, it is. You know, hey, listen, you can learn a lot about your stools and your diet in terms of racing. You know, and
that's
how
true.
you're going to perform. You know, so
it's
all related.
Anyway,
moving on.
So it's kind of warm here. I was going to start on it. It's been kind of warm here in the last few days. So you guys have been getting out and riding, yes?
Yeah, got some good Zone 2 rides in last couple days.
Yeah, I was going to go out today until I saw the 25-mile-an-hour winds,
Yeah,
and I was
brutal.
like, "Oh no, Zwift it is."
Well, you rode up yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday, wasn't it?
Yesterday and the day before.
And the winds were pretty.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean, they were out of the south, so it was a little crummy on the way back, but nothing terrible.
Nothing major. And by nothing major, it's like 20-mile-an-hour winds, but whatever.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of sheltered on that path. You know, if you're out by me and out in the western burb, the far western burbs, you know, you'd be blown all over the road.
This is a rough time of year here because when we get the warm weather, it always comes with wind.
Yeah.
You know, here we are in February in Chicago. Yay, it's 50 degrees, but
baseline 25-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I always used to say that winds were our hills.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Totally.
You know, it's why all of us flatlanders, when we get into criteriums or even road races, if they're in flat sections, if it's wide open, there's a lot of winds. That's kind of like our wheelhouse. We always love it.
Well, that's why Wayne always talked about training down in Fort Lauderdale, and we're like, "Oh, there's no hills down there; it's so flat." And he's like, "Yeah, you get the wind."
Yep. Yeah.
Nowhere to hide.
You don't need elevation when you have all that wind.
It was always funny to see like those that come from climbing areas would come to our area for, you know, flat windy crit and just see them kind of die off or freak out in the wind. You know, it's kind of like.
We should put together like a classic in the Chicago area, like on the, you know, get some country roads out there with some wind. So you have like a full on echeloned out, you know, classic.
We call that Saturday.
Yeah, exactly.
But like a race. We need to put on races. We keep talking about how racing is going away. We need some races.
Yeah. Well,
no?
we used to talk like when I was on Bicycle Heaven. I remember the Tuesday night group ride. We used to get out far west of Randall, and the roads were open enough on some of the sections. It was the old colonial ride or whatever anybody wants to call it, but it there were like Beath Road, I want to say, where
it's a good route.
We would end up wide open, and if it was a windy day, we could echelon across the entire road because we did that. We were some of those a-holes out there going across the entire road, but you could go across the entire road. And I remember there were a few times where we had good rotations going with even two rows, And once it takes a little bit to teach newer riders how to rotate in an echelon, but once you get it, it's such a thing of beauty.
It is.
Is this a group ride you're talking about?
Yeah.
So no yellow line rule?
No.
What's the yellow line rule?
I just stick them in the gutter.
There was
gutter everybody.
The first year that we had the women's squad on PSIMET, we went on a training ride with Wayne up to Lake Geneva, and
Wayne being Wayne Simon.
Wayne Simon, yes, and his Enzo's boys, and the crosswinds coming back were brutal, and so we ended up splitting into. We had 3 little echelons coming back, and it was like 2 guys and a girl, 2 guys and a girl, and 2 guys and a girl. So we had 3 echelons of 3, and everybody was just like leaning the whole way back.
45-degree angle.
It was awesome. You just find that sweet spot in the draft, and the
you
boys towed us home.
You immediately sit upright, and you're like,
yeah. No, that was fun. That was fun.
That could be a lot of fun doing a good echelon in the right conditions, but don't get to do that much out in Colorado. I'm having a feeling.
We just had 26-mile-an-hour winds yesterday, and we were doing intervals. It was pretty brutal.
You guys don't ride though. You guys
that.
Go hiking and like whitewater rafting and shit.
There's people who do that too. Yeah, but speaking of the wind yesterday and the ride yesterday, I've been able to test out this thing. See this thing here? Remember this thing from last week?
Yeah,
this is the mirror.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, I like it. I made some serious adjustments to it, and I found myself using the mirror way more than I thought I would. So
I don't know. I still think I would make adjustments to it with a rock.
With a rock?
Yeah.
As in break your mirror?
You need to get one, Rob. I can't even get it on now. I have to. But anyways, I used it a lot more than I thought I would, and I was actually impressed with it. Here.
I don't know.
I know.
It's one of those things where even if I understand the safety involved in it, it's going to be like the last thing I would ever do for safety. Like I would stop riding on all roads completely before putting a mirror on.
What do you see when you look in that? Do you just see like you see the cars behind you or the person behind you, or how do you have that directed?
I have a set for cars. I tried using it during the ride yesterday when we were doing efforts, but it's too much to look at when you're doing like an effort. But when you're riding and you want to see what's coming behind you, it's nice. It was nice to see what was coming behind, how close the cars were to the shoulder, how many cars were coming, how far back they were, so you could kind of pinpoint. Okay, I got some time here.
I see that with the radar, and I do like the
same
radar.
thing. Well, the radar is the next step up. I still want to do the radar. The mirror, partially I wanted to try it out. I also want to be a dork, and it was useful. I was surprised how useful it was, how much I actually used. You have to close one eye to look into it so you don't get dizzy, but I'm going to continue to use it.
I was thinking about all this yesterday as I was doing these intervals up and down, up and down, up and down on this road. And I'd get to the end of the interval and I'm seeing stars and I need to loop a U-turn. And I have to, look over my shoulder and look behind me long enough to make sure I have room in traffic to swing a U-turn. Mm-hmm. And so I was actually thinking, a mirror would be nice. I don't know if I'm ready to go there.
I do have to say, it used to be a long time ago. I had no problem turning around, taking a look. I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like body tension, something with how I've aged to where if I have to turn and look, I can turn and look, but to get a good look, I have to like almost like stretch myself out and then turn, brace myself and hold myself back so I can actually fully look behind me. It's this weird thing. It doesn't make much sense, but
you need to do some yoga.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, but
Couldn't
it's
hurt.
not like it hurts to do
Right.
it. It's just this like,
You don't have the
I'm
flexibility.
going to have to readjust and then, okay, now I'm good. Okay. So if I'm in a group, I rely on absolutely everybody else to do the heavy look back. You know, Rich Smock can always take a heavy look back, and a couple other guys will always look hard enough and long enough that I know I trust them enough to know nothing's coming. And like I said, I look back a bit, but it's just the hard look back where you're seeing the shoulder back behind you.
Right.
And you know for a fact there's no cars. All right, we're good to go.
I still think you need to do the look back with the mirror. I mean, it's like driving. You can't just trust your mirror. You got to look over your shoulder.
I just trust the other riders and the radar both. If I got both, then I'm kind of like, all right.
Yeah.
Famous last words before I get plastered all over something. But yeah, I don't want to. That's not going to be a good thing. Speaking of getting plastered all over everything, NBC landed their coverage.
Nice segue.
like it.
That was good. Good transition.
NBC Peacock landed their coverage for basically all the ASO races for the next 6 years, I believe, was a part of the article.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Came out. There was some thought that maybe they were not going to get they were actually going to drop out of coverage for sometime within the next year or two. And apparently they've extended their contract with ASO for the next 6 years. So we're going to see another 6 years of coverage on NBC Peacock, good or bad. I mean, when did they, does anyone remember when they took over for Outside? Was it not Outside? Was it OLN, Outside
OLN.
Living
That's
Network?
OLN was early 2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that went through, had to be the early 2010s, maybe?
I don't remember. I remember OLN, but I don't remember when they took over.
Yeah, and they brought along pretty much the same commentators.
Ugh, they need a
Yeah, they need to change up.
they need to switch bad.
I think they're working
I don't
on
know.
that. I've heard through the grapevine that there's some changes in the wind.
So
But-
they're getting rid of Christian?
I don't know if they're going to get rid of Christian or not, but I think they're making some changes and bringing on some new blood.
They need
From what
new
I've
fresh
heard.
blood, and sad as it is to say, I think Phil needs to go.
Oh, Phil needs to go. I think we've covered that here before, but I'll say it again. I'll say it to anybody who listens. He's absolutely the sound. He's the sound that I associate with my youth and listening and watching bike races. I will always appreciate that. That definitely has a place of nostalgia in my heart. But the reality is, I can't listen to him.
He's
anymore.
off his rocker a little bit.
I just can't listen to him anymore.
He
It
does have the
reminds me of
history
hanging
down.
out too much with my dad.
Yeah,
He
absolutely.
does have the
history for
is-
sure. Yeah,
You know, when you got to fill that open air space, that history is a pretty nice thing to have. You know, I don't know. I haven't watched tour coverage in a long time. So
I feel like a lot of the times when there's dead race space or dead air, and they talk about like the buildings and all that stuff around, they're like slid a piece of paper and say, "Hey, talk about this building or this iconic whatever it is when it comes up on the screen," and they're like told to talk about it.
I don't
It
know
just
what it
sounds
is.
like
All I got to say is this last year and the year before, during the tour, we had the opportunity to have the Euro coverage.
Much
I
better.
don't want to say it's full Euro coverage because I think it's still North American coverage. Is it?
No, it's completely different.
So it's the full
completely
Euro
different.
coverage.
Yeah.
So we had the two channels basically to choose from, even on Peacock on the live show. The one doesn't even have commercials, I don't think. And you actually get to sit and watch that, and you don't get Phil and Bob. I'm sorry, but Bob Roll is no Paul Sherwin. That's for damn sure. And
what happened
it
to
just
Paul?
kind of he died.
Holy shit, dude! I forgot about that.
Yeah,
You're
he
right.
died.
Yeah, you're right about
4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think it almost 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
It's so weird how it just
The two of them, Phil and Paul together, they were
They
good.
were okay,
They
'cause-
were good.
Paul would keep like
Yeah.
the leash tight on the senility.
That's a good way to put it.
But now that's kind of gone. You got Bob, and you can tell Bob's trying. Yeah. I mean, he's trying to keep the leash on it, but at the same time, it's Bob. You know, he feels like he's got to be wacky, and you know, let's get out there and talk about some wacky story. Oh, you want me to dial it back? Okay, guys.
I thought he was a lot more toned down this
He has been.
year.
He has been, for sure. Yeah. But it's I don't know.
I liked Wacky Bob.
I did too. When he's not,
he's got some good stories.
When he's the comic relief on a straight duo, you know what I mean. When you got a solid duo that are announcing the race, and they're giving you all the tech and the information, then it's nice to have Wacky Bob jump in there and be like, you know, even the last couple of years when Paul was still around, they had cut Bob out and had him on a separate feed with either Christian or Chris Horner or somebody, you know, that they had doing that coverage. I don't know. I think they also do something, and I was talking about this earlier. They do something that really annoys the hell out of me. All U.S. coverage of bicycle racing does this, and I think it's time for it to go. And it's that every time they cover something, they have to treat every viewer as though it's the first time they've ever seen the sport. Now, I understand why they did that and why they've done that historically, but at the same time, you take just about any other sport, and they don't do that. We don't hear them do that. You know, if you tune into an NFL game, they don't spend the whole time talking about, you know, how the offsides rule works and, you know, at every single game. You know, if there's some weird situation that pops up, they'll go into depth about what that rule is and why it is that way. But for the most part, even sailing, America's Cup, they don't spend the whole time explaining the rules of America's Cup. You know, they pretty much throw the sailing out there, at least to the best of my recollection. I could be wrong on that. We should ask somebody at SRAM. They would know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't really watch any other sports other than cycling
and that bothers you so much.
Yeah, it bothers me because it dumbs down the coverage, in my opinion. It just dumbs down the experience because it's like, let's look at the way you watch this sport in the U.S. today. Right now, I have 3 streaming services that I pay for. Mm-hmm. I pay for GCN, I pay for Flow Bikes, and I pay for Peacock.
Right.
Okay. So I have to have those 3. So already the only people that are seeing any of this are people that went out of their way to pay money to have a subscription. You got to assume they already have a basic knowledge of the sport at that point. So who the hell is their audience, you know? Now, if they've paid for the subscription, I don't know, maybe somebody else is a big fan of a lot of other NBC sports, and so they've paid for the NBC subscription, and they just happen to be cruising along the app sometime in July, and they're like, oh, well, what's this Tour de France coverage? They also have to be up at, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, looking for that information to be able to catch it live. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. It's the way coverage is nowadays and the way it's been. I mean, back when it was on mass media, broadcast, whatever, I understand that there was maybe a point to try to bring Americans a little bit into and more comfortable with the sport. But at this point in time, the people that are watching it are already fans. If they aren't, they're watching it with somebody else who told them to watch it and gave them their subscription or fired it up so they could watch it. So they're around people that can explain the sport to them anyway. And part of that cachet of joining our secret little society over here is that we have silent rules and things about the sport and nuances that you pick up over time just by watching it. And it's not because Bob Roll sat and spent 20 minutes trying to teach people what drafting is, you know, in every freaking race, the whole year or every stage. It just gets old. But,
you know, it's interesting. They should make a resource that, you know, where you could just scan a QR code right from the screen and say, if you don't understand, go here. You know, I mean, because there is a lot of more advanced tactics. There's a lot of more information you could provide in terms of coverage. I do understand why they cover at a lower tier of a, you know, go ahead.
Take a look at any Tour de France preview. that has been put together over the last 20 years, like a magazine back when they had print magazines. If you grab any of those and you open it up, there's 3 pages dedicated to drafting, 4 pages dedicated into terminology that you may have never heard before, a couple of pages explaining all the different competitions within the tour, and all that stuff. It's been done ad nauseum. And I don't know. I just wonder how many are the new.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
You don't do that with a preview for the World Series.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You could have a resource where it just takes you to the videos of Bob or whoever, saying exactly what it is. And it's just a short clip. So you can say, oh, you don't know what drafting is? Click this QR code, go here, and you'll have all the information you need. And it goes right back to the other coverage when you're ready. I don't know exactly how that would look, but
I mean, they could do a graphic. They could do a graphic on the bottom, have
just due to racing, want to understand. Yeah, exactly.
The least experienced person who's a summer intern that knows nothing about cycling was like, oh, I'm on this assignment, and just say, hey, anytime you hear them say something you don't understand, write it down, and then we'll put up a graphic and some information to it.
Yeah, because then that could just stay on the screen statically, and if you're new to it, welcome to the coverage. That's awesome. Thanks for coming. But then, here's a resource for you to use that doesn't take away from talking about the higher level of the competition and what's going on, the technology, the techniques, the strategy behind some of that stuff, interviews. I mean, I haven't watched it in forever. So,
well, and I don't want to say that I'm advocating gatekeeping of information with this, that's not what this is about. It's just that good quality sports coverage of other sports and disciplines doesn't spend its entire time talking about the rules of what you're watching.
Right.
But we also have stages that are multiple hours long with a whole lot of not really much to talk about going on.
Got to fill it up.
It's different than, a sports ball game where, that there's constantly things to cover.
Golf. They don't spend the whole time in golf talking about the basics of the sport. This is how you fill out a scorecard. This is,
I've never watched golf, so I wouldn't know.
Well, if you've noticed, now they're going to replace the divot with, I don't know.
I mean, that's true, Leah. You're right. You have let's say your stage is 100 miles long. You've got 75 miles of time to fill, and so what do you fill it with? You have commercials, you have, technique, strategy, interviews, all that stuff. But then how do you keep it exciting for people to actually watch? Because I think in general, the American population probably finds it fairly boring, and when you think about it, the tour coverage I don't think it's bad. It's been pretty good. I mean, I don't know. Again, I haven't seen it in a long time, but the stuff I have seen wasn't bad.
I will say, if you watch the live, when it starts from start to finish, that it gets a little mundane after a while with everything that, Rob was saying is talked about. But if you go, when it's all over, they have a chopped down version that is 2 hours long, and that's tolerable.
That's tolerable. It's interesting. The one thing I don't like about it is, and this is just a personal thing, but they do a lot of jumping.
Oh yeah,
between clips. Yeah. So they'll if nothing happens for 50K, they just cut the 50K out, which is totally understandable. But there's no audible transition.
No,
that they're doing that. So I'll be I'm listening to it, and I look away, probably at my phone, and then all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, what the hell just happened? I mean, the sun's down. It looks like it's going to rain now. They've only got 30K to go. What happened? I don't know. Maybe, like I said, it's a personal thing. But if they had some big sound effect, even like a whoosh, and they fast forward to 50K to go, then it'd be like, oh, okay, they cut out the boring part.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, bike racing is boring as fuck to watch if you're not watching at the right moment.
Don't worry, the NCL is starting up in April.
I wouldn't mind hopping on a team to do that. I was trying to corral a couple guys, and they all kind of laughed at me. Huff, Pate, Kando, Bajadal. These are all guys. Pretty much.
It would be awesome if you guys showed up.
Dude, I think it'd be sick. I mean, if NCL needs a team, give me a shout. I'm in training right now. Give me a shout, and let's talk.
I mean,
I'm kind of serious, actually.
If you could put that list of people together and get a team going, that would be insane.
Dude, that's what I told them. I think it would be and they're like, oh, we're too old. But I disagree. I think it would be a good thing.
No. Muscle memory does not fade that fast.
And also, like, the mindset. And I think we could be faster than we were. You know, just knowing how to race your bike is a big deal. I'd be into that.
Yeah. I think you guys would do a lot of damage.
I think so too, and I think it'd be fun. I see, Tim, I told them this. I told them all this, dude. I got all excited, and they all independently made fun of me.
That sucks. That sucks, because I really don't, I'll be honest, I don't have an interest in the NCL, but if you got those guys to commit and did it, I would watch. I would pay whatever price I had to watch, and I would watch every single one.
I will say, I'm sorry, I got up and stepped away, so I didn't hear all the background, but are we talking about you and Pate and Huff and
I messaged Huff. I messaged Alex Candelario. These are guys I used to race. You know, Alex was fourth at the California stage. Brad is multinational champion on the. You know, and these guys, you know, and myself included, when you retire from professional sport, it's just, you know, you step into this real world, you know, that you're not necessarily 100% prepared for, and you know, and I'm not waxing on my past. I'm happy where I am today, but I would relish the fact of something to train for, like criterium racing specifically, to see how fast we could actually go and how much damage we could do actually racing. So yeah, I reached out to them, Pate, Huff, Bajadali, Candelario, and you know, Bobby Lee would be another great addition. If we could put together a dream team, it could be owned by, you know, NCL. That's fine. Pay us some money, get us some travel money, get us some bikes. We're going to need bikes. You know, Cando.
Well, you can do the NCL thing, but you got to have a women's team too.
Well, dude, we'd be all for that. Bajadali is the director of the women's rally team. For one, I'd be all for having. We would kick the shit out of people. NCL, if you're listening to this, hit me up. Fun, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
let's do it.
The good news is no one listens to this, so we don't have to worry about
That's not true.
That is not true.
That is not true. But, you know, I like to keep saying that.
You know, I mean,
oh, man.
It would be nice to see you guys get out there and do an NCL round. That is one thing that I wanted to kind of talk about this episode. I totally forgot that was out there. But there was some information about the NCL that came out, and the secondary Miami team is not going to do the NCL. And DNA cycling walked away from it.
See, DNA needs our team. Then, because they're afraid of being tiered well, there's a couple problems going on. NCL owns the team. So if you're going to have a trade team, you can't have a trade team owned by NCL when you have your own sponsors. That's never going to work. That's part of their model. That's a problem with their model.
Sponsors aren't going to be down with that.
So, you know.
Well, okay. I get, sorry, keep going on.
No.
Your
it's okay.
Problem with it.
Well, you know, if you go through the effort and you're, you know, to put together a sponsorship package and you have an ROI and you have a team of people that are committed to these sponsors and the sponsors are committed to the team, why should NCL own that team? Right? They should help fund, offset. They want you to come to those races. They want, you know, the best riders to come. They should have a budget that offsets the cost of those teams even. You know, but I can understand why NCL would want to own the teams to a certain extent, because then they have control over, you know, some aspects of it. But, you know, I don't fully understand the model of owning the teams. And why would any team, Legion or DNA or any other team, join, you know, to be, you know, maybe a division of their program can be owned by NCL that, you know, they send X amount of riders to that NCL pays for. But, like, how could you possibly sign on to something like that?
I don't think they were going to be owned by NCL. I think that this was just an invitational thing.
That's not what I read.
These teams...
There's something unique about how it's structured. Like they would have to be owned by the NCL in part, in some way.
Okay. All right.
And I think the other issue was there were sponsor conflicts.
Yeah. So if a team, like a women's team like DNA, they would have to partner with a men's team, that they're going to have completely different sponsors between the two teams that could be in conflict with each other. Mm-hmm. So that was... I think pointed out as a potential issue.
Part of the issue was, excuse me, there was a sponsor conflict just between the team sponsor and NCL. Like NCL had some sponsors that were in direct conflict with the team. And I don't know, when you look at this big picture, to me, I couldn't help but think, the entire process of the NCL is to take a look at how we race in America and actually fundamentally change our approach to racing in America. And the generalized response, you have all these teams that are now starting to give this response where they're like, well, how do they expect that to work? Well, how do they expect that to work? And the reality is, it's like, of course it's not going to work, because of course it doesn't fit into what you want to do, because what you want to do is exactly what we've always done. They aren't fundamentally thinking of changing how they race in this sport. And as a result, anything that the NCL comes up with isn't going to work for them. You see what I mean? It's like they admit or are sitting there saying, well, yeah, we don't want to change.
Right.
And totally missing the whole point that it's time for a change.
So what is that? They work together? The sponsors work together? Like, what are you talking about?
No, I don't know what the form of that is. If I knew, I mean, I'd be on to better things than running a little wheel company. But in my point of view, it's kind of like one of these things. I've always run up against a lot of people that I've been considered to be a change agent. And I run up against a lot of people that are anchor draggers that want nothing to change. They want to always do it the way that they've always done it. And I understand that, and I understand that mentality. And the general impression that I got by reading the article is that these teams and their management are the anchor draggers, and they don't realize it. To them, they're looking at it as though we have fought hard and trained hard and secured our sponsors and done the team development and everything else to be able to bring a level of professionalism to what we do.
Yeah.
And they're sitting on this air of professionalism, saying the events have to come up to us. We are the professionals. We'll pick and choose which events we go to, but we are the entity. We are the product. We are the beauty. You come to us and woo us. Well, I get that idea and thinking, but what I don't think they understand is that the pool of suitors is gone, shrinking, decrepit, moneyless, and going away.
Well, this is what
unless you fundamentally change the way that you're going about this, like matchmaking, it's just not going to happen. I mean, and if somebody's going to go out and try something like the NCL, and I don't want to sit here and say that I'm a huge fan of the NCL. I think it needs to go this way or whatever. Something's got to change, though. And I got to be honest, what are we going to do? Spend another 4 or 5 years of the same crap that we've been getting, which is just a bunch of cool one-off events that somebody's going to try to string together in something that none of us even really know about until the end of the season. And then we look back on it and go, oh, well, okay, that was meaningless. And we move on to the next thing. It's like something has to fundamentally change. We're never going to be Europe, and we're not going to get there doing what we've been doing. I don't know. I think we have to fundamentally change the structure of racing on the road side in this country. Sorry, that's my rant. And not too bad for considering I've been subdued all day, but
it is a weird model to have 4 criteriums, to pump $7.5 million into it and have teams that are, the structure, there's something fundamentally wrong with that structure. Rob, if you take the team side of, people put a lot of time and effort into putting that stuff together. Why should NCL just automatically own? And again, can we look that up real quick? Can we see if that actually is the case? Do they own the team? Do we have because
hang on, take a look.
All the teams, again, this is kind of like the problem that I had with the lifetime thing too. You're not getting the top tier of the crop. Now, maybe you don't necessarily need that, but how do you make the racing better? What is the solution to making racing more inclusive and better across a spectrum so that people follow it and want to be a part of it?
And see, that's the thing. It's not continuing to do what we're doing.
But what is it that we're doing that's USA Crit Series was a thing that was going for a little while until that guy was,
it wasn't much of a thing, though. Do you know what I mean?
Followed it. Yeah, I don't know, actually. Yeah, it was past my time. So, yeah, I don't know.
It to me, and when I say it wasn't really a thing, what I'm saying with that is that had no appeal to the generalized public. The only appeal that it really had, I would argue, the only appeal that it had was to that level of racer and their specific teams. and maybe the announcers.
So that's the same thing. It's the same thing with the NCL thing. It's the same thing with the Lifetime thing. Like, what's the point beyond the racers and the people part of those teams and the organization? Like, who cares?
To me, and I could feel free to disagree with me, but to me, I'll say the NCL, but it could be anything. But this NCL style of model where you're completely changing the fundamental nature of the sport, and they're pushing that racing. It's kind of like, let's say Red Hook, okay? Same kind of thing. I understand there's a lot of specifics that are completely different. But the idea of fundamentally changing the way the racing is occurring is the product in and of itself. So, meanwhile, all we're doing is continuing the same thing and giving it different names that are meaningless. Crit Series USA, USA Crit Series, the Speed Crits of tomorrow, Tour of America's Dairyland, I mean, all of these things are meaningful to us because we're in the sport and we just hear it. So you say USA Crits, I just go, okay, I've heard that before.
Yeah, same.
But I wasn't sitting there pegged in front of my TV to watch every damn thing.
Right.
But if you said Red Hook, I understand exactly what Red Hook is. And I understand it's a style of racing. Now, I either like to watch it or I don't like to watch it. That's another thing. But if we keep doing the same thing and keep having the same damn trade teams, I mean, what's coming out of it? What are we building with it?
What do the sponsors even get out of it? I don't even, that's Nothing. The thing is like when you're a sponsor of a team, what are you getting out of it marketing wise? Is selling a product or like your mission statement or whatever it is that you represent? Like, what are the riders actually doing when you're on a team? Like, sell me the ROI. What is it? You show up to a race, you race in front of a whole bunch of people. I'm
waiting for others to chime in because I'm saying too much here.
I was just trying to. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, you can keep looking it up. I'm just saying, like you don't interact with the crowd at all. People don't see the product that they're selling unless they go to the website. They're just there for the action. So when you have a sponsorship on a jersey, what is that sponsor getting other than placement on the jersey? The only time that we ever interacted with people, like when I, rode for some of these teams was, going to, like the Ronald McDonald House, and interacting with kids that were, in a really terrible situation, like how I don't ever remember doing anything that benefited the sponsors other than just racing my bike. What did I do? So how do you change the model where people invest money, make money from it, and then the spectators also enjoy being part of that? I
don't think that ever changes.
And how does that happen in football or baseball? Like that's the same thing. It's the same.
That's my thing.
Yeah,
I would say to those ends that those sponsors aren't actually getting the dollar for dollar payback. That everyone wants a business case, and what I started to find early in my previous careers was that business cases are awesome with ROIs and everything else. They're awesome when you're in school and you can use numbers that show an ROI. The reality of the real world, though, is that there's very few instances where there's actual ROIs that you can articulate in dollars without completely bullshitting and muddying up all of your assumptions and structuring your case in such a way that, of course, it looks pretty on paper in an effort just to convince people to do it. Oh, yeah, no, this is a no-brainer. We should totally. And I mean, can you imagine that? You go to the local pizza joint and you're like, hey, you should totally sponsor our team. Well, why should I do that? Well, because, you're going to put your name on our jerseys, and that's going to be awesome.
So that's the
Thanks,
thing,
bro.
That's the thing, Rob, is how do you drive
I'll
clients?
Come to you. I'll come. I'll buy a big pizza. That should help, right?
And it's $10,000 or $50,000 in marketing, at what point that model is broken? Like the sponsorship model is broken. The interaction with the communities that you race in is also broken because you're focused on the race, so how do you change that structure and then incorporate the community within, that area that you're racing so that people actually respond to it in a really positive way and then drive people to those companies that are supporting,
Not to mention most people in most of the communities just don't like cyclists, and they don't like cyclists in their communities. Or they do advocate and do like cyclists in their communities. They like the ones that are using it for transportation and enjoyment of the community, not the lycra clad mammals that are flying through their towns and not stopping at every intersection and things like that.
That's actually that's interesting you say that, because, a lot of the races will say, oh, we have these many people coming into this race, but how many people stop and stay in town and get dinner or drink beer after the race? You have the spectators come out, but like, if you don't have a strip on the course that's like a tavern laden place with restaurants, what is the impact on the community? You're closing down the roads, you're paying for the fees for the police officers, you are impeding traffic. So how do you change that model so that it is embraced in this country?
You just have to discuss it. I know I've discussed it here on this podcast before, where I've talked about this specifically, but my wife and I, every time that we go to a race in any community, we always make it a point to go and visit a local eatery, store, anything else, and we always make it a point to tell our server, the person at the checkout, whatever, oh, it's a great shop, great restaurant. I never would have come here if it wasn't for this race.
Right.
I'm in your community today because of the race. I have business cards set up in this rack behind me, a box of them that say, we gave them out to our teams. And I encourage other teams, it's a great idea for you. Go and print super cheap business cards that have your logo on it. And it just says, I forget exactly the wording, but it says, I visited your business today because of your sponsorship of PSIMET Racing, something to that effect. So we used to give them to people on the team. So if they would go across the street and eat at one of our sponsors, River Street Tavern, they're paying their bill. They slide that into the bill. Say, hey, I came here today because you guys sponsor our team. It's a way for the owner to be able to go, oh, well, there's a way to articulate that money, on a one-by-one basis, but you get a generalized feel. If you get 30 of those cards in your checks over the month, then, okay, maybe this $300 sponsorship was kind of worth it,
It's already paid for itself.
Yeah. So, but then again, I have been in situations and sponsorships where I have laid out a ROI business case and everything. I remember it was for a local restaurant and brewery, and I summarized with receipts how we as a group had spent something like $3,000 in the last year. And I was asking them for I think it was a $500 sponsorship or a $1,000 sponsorship. And I was like, we spent this much and we weren't even having meetings there. If you were to pick us up, then we would have our meetings there once a month or whatever. And I was articulating how that would turn into direct dollars for them. And they flat out looked at it and went, yeah, cool, but no. And it backfired on them in a way, in that it just made me not want to go there anymore, because it was kind of like, to me, it was like, that was one of the first few times where I've taken the time and said, I think this is really going to work out for you. And this is why I do think it's going to work out. And when they're like, oh yeah, no, that's a positive ROI, I still don't want it. That's when I was like, all right, I'll pick somewhere else to eat.
Yeah, it is an interesting model. I mean, the whole thing is interesting. Like, when you break it down, all these different factors, and I know some races actually track that data. They want to know like what the impact in the community was, because I think general communities are also asking the same question: what is the impact? Does it drive anything other than just people coming to our town to do this race and leave? And by and large, cyclists are pretty selfish people. Well, I shouldn't say that in that regard. I just know that
they are.
I think you can say that.
Yeah, you can say that.
They are. We all
see
are.
that's lame.
It's a pretty self-absorbed sport.
Yeah, because you show up the day of, you show up 2 hours before your event starts. You're there for your warm up. You want to have the best race you possibly can, and then depending what's the next day, you're working your cover, you're getting to the next stage, or like going to the next city. You're on to the next thing. So you're in and out. Thank you. So I do think that these are all like the NCL thing. It's a very good example. They're going to come in for what's the point? What are you showing? You're going to do this race. How are you having, what is it that it's going to bring? And maybe it's not just about to the community. Like, what is the purpose of any race? I mean, seriously, think about that. What is the purpose of any race? You're putting it on for a select group of people.
I think you're going to, saying that, you're forcing me into retirement.
It is depressing.
Well, this just
absolutely.
made me realize I need to figure out a way to let ButcherBox know that the reason why I signed up for a subscription and I'm starting to get product from them every month is because of their sponsorship.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
just like a box.
And
just
I'm
like a box of meat at your door.
I get a box of meat from them every month, and I'm like, I want to support them because they sponsor bike racing.
Yeah, it's so important that they know. It's so important, Rob. What you do with the card, dude, is so important. Like, if you're a rider for any team, like, your sponsors are a key avenue for you to, like, represent. For me, I do a terrible job with my donors. My donor outreach is terrible because I'm busy doing 100 other things. But I need to actually call and say thank you. I haven't done that. The sponsors that have sponsored me, you know, like, it's hard to sell a product when they don't give you a code to say, hey, go use this product for 10% off. You know, but they don't want to upset their dealers. So I have to respect that too. So all you can do is say, hey, this is a great product. I really like this for X, Y, and Z. But, you know, how do you get more people to come to the races and engage into riding? Like, what, and, you know, these races will have like fairs and music festivals. I mean, that's what they were doing at the Pro Challenge. They had a huge concert just to get people to come. So you're putting on like multiple events just to have people come to this race. That seems, there's a fundamental flaw with that. There's something wrong with that.
Well, and we were talking to, I won't name who, but we were talking to some individuals not that long ago about a larger race or a larger event, like how to put it on. And it struck me because in races that they've been around in the past, I see how they have like a family fun ride. And that's always something that's great. It brings out a lot of people in the community. You know, they come in, they either have the kids race or everyone gets on, they take laps of the course, that kind of thing. But what they were noticing was that when they would do that, they did it before the main events. So they would do it before the women's pro race and the men's pro race, thinking that
they would
great way to get the families there. They ride around, they'll stay, watch what's going on, visit the vendors, all that kind of thing. What they found was that they had people showing up in the races before that because they're all anticipating what's going to happen. And then they go and they do their ride around, and the second they're done, they jet. They're like back into their homes, they're back into the community, whatever. So their idea was, you know what, we're going to wait and save this until after the men's race is over. Last race of the day, then we're going to put the family fun ride out there.
At 9:30 at night.
You know?
That's safe.
It's like
it could be if you have lights.
Dozen the other.
It could be a lot of fun that way too. You have the bike rides. You have the decorations. And you could make that a fun venue. How do you?
Well, why can't you have the kids race? Why can't you have the kids race earlier in the day, and then the family fun ride at the end of the last race? Have two community events. Give them a reason to come early and stay late.
True.
We're not going to redesign racing sitting here on this podcast. I'm sorry.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, it is an interesting thing, though. I mean,
but I don't know. Hopefully, for those of you that are listening, you kind of get an idea that those of us that put on races, it's not like we never thought of any of this stuff.
No, you've thought of it at all. Every single thing we just talked about has been done or tried or implemented. I mean, so many creative people have put on races and face these same problems. And so many promoters. I mean, how many races have come and gone? Every one of those races had a promoter.
We were talking about that on our Sunday meeting with the ICA. We were talking about, is there some way of generating a list? And I actually have a picture of a list that we made quite a few years ago of all the races that have come and gone just in this area.
And how many of those had individual promoters?
Almost all of them. Only a few were larger, like.
I mean, that's just an ongoing problem. It's just it upsets me.
The only reason why I'm saying this, hey, we thought of it before, is because I hear from a lot of people, a lot of racers who don't want to get involved and don't want to be a part of putting on a show, but they all think that they know the reason why a race isn't more popular. And they're like, well, have you guys ever thought about doing X, Y, and Z? And it's like, yeah, no, we have. Everyone has. We've either thought about it, we've tried it, we've gone through the discussion. There's 20 different reasons why we don't. So if you're listening, have some sympathy for the fact that odds are the promoters have tried to do that or thought about doing it. But more in depth, why don't you just get involved, reach out and talk to the promoter, say, hey, I'd like to be a part of the planning process or see what goes on. Not, hey, I want to schedule some time with you so I can sit down and tell you all my ideas for this race.
Or bitch after the fact.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Tell you all the ways I think you could do better, but have no solution.
Right.
Yeah.
Just be like, hey, I would like to play a role in it. And then if you do have all these great ideas and you don't think that they've been done before, then be like, hey, I know we just went out to the course and I helped you mark everything. And I put up all the signs to every resident in the neighborhood and knocked on the door and explained to them why they will or will not have access to it. I got yelled at 3 times. I got an appreciation for this process. But I was thinking, have you ever thought about doing it? That's the time to bring it up.
If you had a bouncy house, that would fix everything. You'd get everybody to come.
You just
out.
need a bouncy house.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's NBC and Peacock.
We got totally tangent there. Yeah.
How about esports finale, UCI?
February
is it World
18th?
Championships or is it National Championships?
World.
Where is that?
World?
Is that? So I guess I don't understand. So there's a course.
There's a course created on the Zwift. It is Scotland. They have created routes specifically for this event, which is on February 18th.
It's in Scotland, or they created it because every World Championship next year is in Glasgow. Every World Championship, like road, TT, I think, like mountain biking, it's all in Glasgow.
Cyclocross?
Yeah.
You might be right. No, I think next year is Tabor for cyclocross.
Oh, so it'll be good.
Yeah. So they created a new map in Scotland for this event. I got to ride on one of the courses today, just on a group ride on Zwift this morning.
And it's a weird format. There's supposedly these are stats you were reading out to me, but 86 participants.
Well, there's like 100 riders or something on the first race, and then the top percentage of
30.
that, the top 30, go on to race number 2, and I think there's 10 minutes between
10 minutes between
races,
and then
the top 10 go on to the last race,
the podium round.
And there's a local racer.
There is a local racer,
Wait a second.
Jacqueline. Yeah.
It's like an elimination race to get to the finals.
Yeah.
And then how many people were in the final? 10?
Yeah.
10, yes.
This is a dumb race setup.
Well, you know what? When the first iteration of the Zwift Worlds went off, I stupidly found myself in front of my television watching it, and I was like, I don't know why I'm watching this, but for some aspect, it's kind of entertaining. And when it was over, I was like, okay. And that was just avatars racing on in a make-believe world. And for some reason, I thought it was entertaining. This at least makes it kind of exciting-ish.
I like the gimmick.
Yeah.
I'll call it a gimmick.
Good way to put it.
I like the gimmick of interesting formats. That's always interesting to me. I think it's lost, though, on actual coverage of the event. So, Mike, you texted me a couple weeks back out of the blue, said, hey, go on to YouTube and check out this race that's being live streamed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it
was,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
What race was it? I don't even remember. Like, what series was it a part of?
It's part of this Zwift racing series. It was talking to the guys from the Next Esports. They're like ranked number 1 in the world for esport racing, and a lot of the guys that are going to the World Championships ride for this team. I was gonna ride for them earlier this year. It was kind of a funny thing. Anyways, it's a different story. But
they had Dave Tolley was doing the announcing.
Yeah, I was doing the announcing
with another guy.
Yep.
And they were trying, and it was an interesting format. It was like there was a 1 point on the course every time through. Like you had to have one person in the team represented within the top so many positions, and then it was a missing out.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a missing out by team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was like if you didn't have a team member in the top 5 spots, then your team was eliminated.
Right. Yeah, I mean, didn't.
Sounds cool. Great format. Seems interesting. My general impression, I really wanted to pay attention. I had no clue what the hell was going on the whole time I was watching it. I mean, I knew the premise. I knew what they were trying to do. I was trying to pay attention to see how that works, but I couldn't. It was just a bunch of
now
avatars.
If someone was there explaining to you drafting and everything, just like the NBC coverage, you would understand it.
They were there explaining everything. Trust me. And I could not. It's something about
that was
a bunch of avatars.
The block inside of your head going, I'm watching avatars race bikes. This is ridiculous.
They're all the same. I don't care
if
they make them different.
Rob.
They all look the same. They just have slightly different.
You know what's weird is when you're watching a Zwift race and they're talking about who's ever doing well in the Zwift race in their IRL, how they race in real life. It's just bizarre. Like, I don't know.
No, go on, Tim. Go on, Tim. Yeah, go on.
No, it's just weird because I've watched a few of them, and it's just like, so and so's, in the break with this guy, but in real life, this guy does this, and that. I can't put it together. It's just weird. Maybe I'm weird. I'm sorry.
I mean, esports is a thing, and they know how to cover it. I'm sure they went through iterations on figuring that out. I could watch esports gaming competitions. I think as a kid, I never gamed. I would sit down and, hey, I got a Nintendo. You want to come over? Sit down, and I would watch somebody else play for hours and hours and hours.
What else you got going on this Saturday?
Oh, well, here at the shop.
It's February 18th.
Leah, continue on the structure. I want to know more about the structure. So you have this elimination, right? Because one was like you have 30, and then you have like a hill climb, and then you have like 10 people go for the final. That's it. 10 people.
Yeah. So it starts. Everybody's in the first race, and then they take the top 30 from that. They go on to race number 2, and then they take the top 10 from that, and they go. And they have a different route for each one of those races. And right there.
Yeah. So you've got segment 1 is called the punch, right? So it must be some kind of short little punchy little route, right? And then, here we go. We got some demographics. It's 8.6K in length, elevation change of 166 meters.
That's the second one, the climb. So this is the first one, the punch. It's 14 kilometers, elevation change 106 meters. And then the next one's called the climb. The next one's called the podium. And they get, the climb is shorter. It's 8.6K. And then the last one is 12.3. Yeah. I don't know. I was
clear as mud.
It's going to be interesting. It'll be something different to look at.
It's something different for sure. But go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say, if you are fully invested in esports racing and this is your bag, I'm stoked for you. It's not my thing, but that doesn't mean like I could probably, given this format, I could maybe see myself taking a couple minutes out of my day just to check it out, but I'm not going to sit there and watch the whole thing. But again, if you are fully invested in this style of racing, I think this format, if I were a participant, would be cool to me rather than just racing 50K around a circuit.
And we have a local Chicago woman that's in the race too, so that's kind of cool.
I don't want to keep poo-pooing esports and racing online. It's not for me. I don't think.
Well, I'm an advocate.
Doing it in terms of doing it, it's not for me. I think I could probably watch it. I am an advocate. I need to develop skills for watching it.
Yeah.
Are you going to watch it, Mike?
I might tune in a little bit. I don't like the race structure. It seems more like just like 8.6K is nothing, it's like, why, if you're going to do this, why not do a stage race where you have multiple kinds of, you have a time trial and then you have, a hill climb or whatever, or a road race that has climbs in it, a flat road race. It just seems silly to get down to 10 people to have an elimination to determine you're a world champion. That just seems like a silly structure to me. That being said, I could see, why not have a road race? If you're a good climber, you can out climb it. I mean, the drafting thing. So, okay, I'm going too many places all at once here. I am an advocate for the e-racing and training. I like doing it, right? I do it weekly. I enjoy getting in the rides. I enjoy getting in the races, even at the sea level, and hurting myself, and I get off and I'm in pain and I'm hungry after it. It's a great workout. That's why I like it. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you're going to race a world championship, then make it a world championship. The world championships every year aren't on the same kind of course. They don't structure it out that way. And now maybe e-racing is a little bit different. but it's still e-racing, like, I mean, the draft algorithm on Zwift is not that great. Once you're off the back, it's really hard to get back on. I think it would be interesting to see like a real race, like and like you have a climb, but then you have time to get back on, like, I mean, why not make it like a real race? I don't understand the structure of doing, this elimination style.
I don't think anyone's keen to sit on their bike for 6 hours like a real world championship.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, it can be a 2 hour or an hour and a half long race with all those features in there.
You could do a 50K. Yeah. I will say though, I've watched some Zwift racing in the past, and I did watch the initial World Championships. And what I thought was cool was there's commentators that commentating on the events of what's taking place in the race, but they do have little side screen of competitors, and they, actual in real life shots of competitors burying themselves. And I think that is cool. I think to attach the avatar to the human and be able to see the effort that they are giving is cool.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Wahoo, the RGT platform with the Magic Roads, they can laser map like the surroundings in the actual course. So if you're racing like Redlands or like Intelligentsia Cup or whatever, you're racing on that course.
Yep.
Instead of making these make-believe worlds, I do like the idea of racing in the real world. If you could actually have like a real course, a real world championship course that mimics the world championships, or whatever, or a world championship course from years past, like, I mean, it's this, there's pros and cons, there's a whole bunch of other platforms out there too, but like the fact that like RGT can give you the actual course, I think is rad.
Yeah. That, as someone that has switched entirely to the Wahoo platform, I thought that was one of the cool things. I have yet to try it, but I think that's really neat that ability exists.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, we all picked up information during the show last week where we're now all at least trying RGT, are going to at some point. I got my account profile set up yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know anytime you guys want to ride. I'll hop on one of your rides for sure. I really like the RGT platform, the system for training. I mean, it's different than Zwift. Zwift is great for riding with my, people that are on Zwift. Like I said, I have both, so they're different.
Zwift is its own thing, and I think where some people get lost with Zwift is they treat it, they forget it's a game. They really want it to be a simulation. It's not. And it's because every other cycling system before then, like I think back to the CompuTrainer era and everything else, it was always trying to simulate real life. And Zwift has been very specific that it's not a simulator, it's a game. And you're coming on to experience this game environment. And where a lot of people get lost is it's a game, but they try a lot to try to match real world physics of riding. And the trade-off on that, it's almost like I'd like to see somebody completely deviate from that and go down a road of total game, no real resemblance to actual real world cycling, but using inputs from cycling that play or advance the game in a certain way.
Well, that's why they're trying to do the turning thing,
right?
But different advantages.
I don't think you can blend both. And Zwift's out has always been, well, it's not really a simulation; it's a game, so you should just play it like a game. And I think that has some benefits to it. I think RGT is more of an actual simulation, in my opinion.
Yeah, Ruby too is real world roads with an avatar, and you're like ripping around, California, and you're like this avatar,
it all just depends on what the individual person wants. Like I like Zwift because I want the social part of it. Like I like to get on there and either do a pace group or I do a group ride that matches the pace I'm trying to ride at. And then the fun for me is trying to stay in the group. I'm not
attacking the group.
Right. I'm not trying to do intervals and training or any of that stuff when I'm riding on Zwift. I get on there to do my recovery rides, my endurance rides. I do my intervals on a dumb trainer. I'm not hooked up to anything because I got a coach telling me what to do. So I do that separate. So I'm here for the social aspects. If I was looking at these programs and platforms for training, I don't know that Zwift is the best solution. You know, Tim's a big fan of I haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah. Tim, I'm glad you checked it out. Yeah. And Leah, I just followed you on Companion app because I agree with you, Leah. I mean, the training and racing, the racing is hard. I'm fucked sometimes racing. My heart rate's at like 181 half the time. In fact, Zwift, they need to make an altitude algorithm bonus because dude, my heart rate's pegged and some people are like 130 and I'm like 170. The workout when you're racing and doing those rides, Leah, is awesome.
Me getting out of bed.
That's a problem, Rob. But Tim, I'm glad that you tried the Wahoo system, dude. I mean, what do you think so far?
I was, in the beginning of the year, early, like the first week of January, I was trying to do some work on Zwift, with some intervals and stuff. And I just kept getting frustrated with the gaminess of it and just all the ride-ons and all these people wheel sucking in the virtual world. I'm just like, I got enough of this going on when I ride outside. It just bothered me.
It's distracting.
It's distracting, and I couldn't focus, but it takes away from your focus. So I was like looking at other avenues to go down, and I remember I think we had talked about the Wahoo system. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to dive into this. I'm going to check it out. I peeled back some layers, and I'm like, okay, cool. They have a 14-day trial. I went on and signed up for the 14-day trial. I talked to my wife about it, and I was like, 3 days in, I was like, this is the world I want to be in. This is like, I'm staring at blue bars. I have structure. I got no outside annoyances. I can just do what I need to do in the way that I want to do it for the type of athlete I am. This is all me.
Right.
All me.
Have you followed any of the stories, like watch the videos where they tell you to go hard and like do the interval?
I have, and I enjoy it completely. Like I did my 4DP test. I got all those numbers, and then all those videos that, you watch when you're trying to do, a workout. I like how it's catered to your 4DP profile, and the efforts that they're giving in the video are the efforts you're going to do in real life, or for yourself. I thought it was completely a better platform for the type of athlete that I am and what I want to achieve. I've never been one for the socially, the social aspect of it all.
You should jump into a race or a ride with Leah and I. Leah, we're going to ride together. Like I said, I just followed you in the Companion app. So next time you're active,
right.
let's do it. But Tim, the racing side of things, like whether you're an RGT
Report the request as a stalker.
Yeah. No, I can't hop in. I deleted my Zwift account. Completely gone.
Okay.
I don't know if you know this about Tim yet or not, but he's pretty all in when he makes a decision.
I've noticed this a little bit.
I respect it.
Yeah,
I like
actually do too. Yeah.
It comes from my addictive personality, with drugs and alcohol and stuff. I've tried a few times to like ease it and just kind of like be mindful about it and consumption and things like that. And it never turned out to be that I could manage that. So it's all or nothing for me. And that's kind of just the way
when you know what you
is.
like, you know what you like.
Yeah. And it was just like, I'm bummed that it took me so long to find this kind of a platform versus the 3.5 years I did Zwift. And I'm not knocking it. It served its purpose. It did what I needed it to do initially, but it just got on my nerves, and I just like, I need something else.
Well, to the same extent though, you don't use Strava.
No, I got rid of
Same
Strava
kind of
years
reasons,
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whereas to me, I still use Strava, and I don't have to.
Yeah.
I was kind of against it for a long time, but I do Training Peaks.
Right.
I log not because I need to know exactly what my form is on any given day,
Mm-hmm.
but more as it's a place where all of my files are and have been for the last 15 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do Strava, and I actually started paying for Strava this year, which is funny because everyone else ran away from it. But for those social interactions, for that, I don't really go onto it unless I've done a ride. Some people actually spend all their time, looking at it and don't like any ride that anybody
I don't use
posts.
it for what it was really intended for, I guess. I have no interest in segments and competing on any of that crap.
I guess I kind of do. I don't, because I'm not competing for anything, but I do like to get back from a ride and go, oh, look, 28 achievements. Well, that confirms for me we were riding a little bit harder than normal.
I guess that part of it is fun. I guess I think I post to Strava, not all of my rides, but mostly I like to see where people ride. I like to see routes.
Yeah, I like to see the heat map. The heat map I really like, and that's why I finally started paying for it, because I really like the routing features and I liked being able to see the heat maps, and that was beneficial to me. And it's worth paying for me. But I get why would anybody use it if you're not into the social aspect of it? You know,
I mean, the segment hunting can be fun if you're fit enough to go for a segment here and there. You know, it's pretty fun to see where you are. You know, when you push it for 30 seconds off. Or I mean,
I almost went out. If somebody could have given me a drive out west today, I would have.
Been great.
I knew some segments today. I was just like, if I could have coordinated this in advance with the wind.
That's the problem. That's the problem, because everyone goes and gets these KOMs when there's a tailwind. I know,
or they get people to like.
Do you know how many emails I'd got on Strava before I quit it that I would get something that says, "Oh, your KOM's been taken," and then you dive into it and you peel back the layers and you see that their average speed was 56, and you're like, "Oh, dude, your bike's in the car and you didn't turn your computer off."
Yeah.
Oh, but then you can flag it.
Yeah,
and then,
you can flag
it. I was like, I don't want to bother. I'm just gonna, delete.
All I gotta say is I know
that.
Alex is probably going to listen to this. So this is a memory I got of Alex on a day like today. He showed up in the shop and I was like, "Oh, Alex is coming in." He's talking to me and he's like, "You mind if I use the bathroom real quick? I got to change, whatever." "Oh, yeah, sure, whatever." And comes out. I'm thinking he's visiting me and he's like, "No, with this wind, I got to go. There's a couple segments I got to go nab." And so he took off. And, by God, he took them.
That's disgusting to me. Well, it really is. It really is.
I do sometimes like to compare and see where I'm. There is a local woman that owns a lot of the segments in my area that I ride on, and I'm like, damn, she's got this. I wonder if I can get it.
Is it somebody we know?
Yes, it is.
Right.
Diana Rieger Roberts.
Oh, Diana.
she's
strong.
Dominating.
She's strong.
I was kind of hoping this would be some new person that we've never heard of before. We need to get him on a race bike.
No, she's on a race bike.
No, she is.
It's all going to change because the CEO left Strava. So
that was the other thing in the news that I thought we probably should have covered, and that's our quick segue. The CEO is left Strava. This is the second time he's left in their history. And
really?
Yeah, I did some research on it.
Yeah,
he left before. He came back.
Oh, geez.
And he's leaving this time saying it's time for Strava to have new leadership to take it to where it needs to go in the future.
And he also apologized for the recent big price increase, saying he moved too much too fast or something like that.
And
how much is it now?
Yeah.
That's the thing. There's no direct answer. That was the big
varied all over the place.
It varies depending on your region
and
part of the world.
It was very
you're in.
inconsistent.
Yeah.
It's like gas prices.
Very weird.
Yeah, he got a lot of heat for it.
He got a lot of heat for it. What he decided, the general consensus seems to be that everyone was willing to probably pay a little bit more for it. Who was paying? You're always going to lose some people. Be like, "Oh, you mean I can't buy soda for 5 cents a can anymore?" But you're always going to lose some people. But generally, things are getting more expensive. So a lot of people were okay with the prices increasing, but what they found was that the pricing policy was not consistent. Not only that, you couldn't really answer it. In other words, it depended on how long you had your account and whether or not you were doing monthly or if you're doing an annual pay and all sorts of other factors. So there was a big blow up about that. And afterwards, he's basically like, "I'm sorry about that. I'm gone. We need somebody else to take this company to the next level," implying that the next level is an IPO of some sort. There are a lot of people, though, that I've heard talk over the years who have said that they have had so much venture capital and development money over the years, and they still, after 10 years with this product, and they still haven't figured out a model that pays off. So they can't.
That's why they're raising prices.
Well, and they said during the price increases that they have to do this. They can't survive without raising prices. And so, they've had a long time. They've had a lot of money. They should have figured out a way to make money off of this, by now. And I got to say, I don't want to poo-poo everybody that works there. I'm sure they're working hard. but I haven't seen any major fundamental changes to that platform in 5, 6, 7 years. So what are they doing with the money? But that's me.
Training Peaks went up as well.
So did Zwift. Isn't Zwift going up to like $20? Same thing.
Something like that.
Yeah. Zwift is going to go up as well too.
It's the world we live in. Everything's getting more expensive.
Yeah, but then
Enzo's Buttonhole Chamois Cream is still $19.95 MSRP. Get it at your local retailer. Has not increased prices in over 10 years.
It is a good product. I do like Buttonhole as a chamois cream.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I did use it.
If you're not going to do that, why don't you get some 11 Jackson coffee? Stop by the PSIMET website, PSIMET.com. Buy some 11 Jackson coffee, and we can ship it right to you. The finger guns have got to. So on that note, bring an episode. We were going to run this a little bit short. We still ran long again. It's amazing. We could sit down here 5 minutes before starting, not have any topics, and still run like an hour and 20 minutes.
That goes off our structure of being like a bike shop conversation.
Yep. It's got to be a lot of, it's what happens when you got good people and you want to talk about stuff you guys actually like and care about. So on that note, if there's something that you like or care about and you haven't heard us talk about it, please reach out to us. Send us an email at roadisdead@gmail.com. Once again, roadisdead@gmail.com. Always listen, like, and subscribe on any platform that you use, whether you listen to audio podcasts, platforms such as Spotify, Apple iTunes, what have you, or direct on our roadisdead.libsyn.com, or video. If you go out to YouTube, please like our videos, subscribe. Even if you got to put it on in the back, while you're working and just kind of listen to the audio, even though you're not watching it, just go ahead and do that for us. You'd definitely benefit from that. So
we would appreciate it greatly.
Always. So once again, thanks for joining us and enjoy the ride.
Ciao.